Hey, my name is Johannes D. We are here at RNG Works 2023 in Nashville, Tennessee. Hey guys, I'm here with Johannes from RNG Collision. Thank you for having us and spending your time with us today. Can you take a minute and introduce yourself to our public?
Sure. My name is Johannes Escudero. As you know, I'm the founder and CEO of the Coalition for Renewable Natural Gas, and our entire team of staff provide leadership, education, advocacy to advance our mission, which is to advance the sustainable development, deployment, utilization of renewable gas, including RNG and CO2. And it's closely linked with our why. Everything we do is so that not just present, but future generations have access to domestic, renewable, clean fuel, energy, and products. And thank you for joining us here in Nashville for our annual Technical Workshop and Trade Expo.
Thank you for that. Can you explain us where do you see this market in RNG being in the next 5 years? How do you see market growing?
The market is expanding beyond what is the regulatory space to the voluntary space. What I mean by that is through effective policy advocacy and education, we've been able to help create market demand for RNG and RNG's derivative products. For example, RNG to power, RNG to fuel, RNG to renewable heat. And that's governed and promulgated by policies that require purchase or consumption of our commodity. But increasingly in the next 5 years, we're going to see the voluntary market expand and mature to where companies are, by their own volition, choosing to purchase RNG to decarbonize either Scope 1, Scope 2 emissions, again, of their own volition, not because they're required to by law, but because they want to do what's best for the environment and for the economy.
Okay. Can you explain basic process of production of renewable natural gas comparing to the natural gas which we get from Earth?
It's a great question. Yeah, so whereas conventional natural gas or fossil natural gas utilizes hydraulic fracturing to tap reservoirs of methane that are trapped deep below the Earth's surface, our industry is actually capturing renewable natural gas. Molecularly, the methane is very similar, but the source is different. And so we're tackling emissions and mitigating emissions that derive from landfill, agricultural, livestock waste, diverted food waste, wastewater treatment facility. Essentially, as organic material decomposes or biodegrades naturally, it emits methane and other gas constituents. So our industry steps in and again mitigates the otherwise inevitable harmful impacts and captures that methane and the CO2 and other gas streams, and then converts it from an environmental liability to a renewable energy asset in the form of fuel, heat, power products.
Right. What are the primary sources of the feedstock of RNG production instead?
Today, the largest stationary sources of RNG production are landfills. That's where most municipal solid waste is deposited still, but increasingly, as policy landscape shifts and requires that organic waste be diverted away from landfills to digesters, compost facilities, we're seeing RNG produced from methane that emits at dairy farms, at pig farms, wastewater treatment plants, biogas operations across multiple feedstocks.
Do you see this industry moving over to food waste as well?
Food waste is also, I was remiss for neglecting that, food waste is also an incredible source of methane emissions, again, by virtue of the fact that that organic material is decomposing and methane emits as a result. So we're capturing that. We've got companies who are leading in the space in that regard. In fact, we have well-known companies in the food and beverage sector that are delivering their leftover food waste, the inedible food waste, to our member companies who are then digesting that, producing renewable natural gas, and then selling that gas either in the form of fuel, heat, or power back to those staple companies like Starbucks and others.
Is that feedstock from the food waste, is that being used also for the landfill, spreading onto the landfills after production of biomethane?
Yeah, so the great thing is after you've digested the organic material, there's digestate that is left over that can absolutely be used as a soil amendment, as a fertilizer, to again help regenerate the soil, whether you're planting crops or whether you're looking to improve the nutrient quality for whatever you're growing and harvesting.
RNG has been sold as low carbon alternative and conventional natural gas. How do the carbon emission from RNG production and use compare to those on conventional gas?
So the beautiful thing about renewable natural gas is, for example, if you're capturing methane from a dairy farm, and then you're converting that methane into renewable fuel that's displacing diesel. We know that methane is a short-lived climate pollutant, many times more potent than carbon on a life cycle basis. And so by virtue of capturing an otherwise unmitigated source of emissions, converting that into a fuel that's now displacing diesel, for example, you're decarbonizing that fuel supply dramatically. In some cases, 80 times below zero, which is an improvement.
That's crazy. What are the primary challenges of facing the expansion of adopting RNG and on the mainstream energy source? Do you think you're going to reach the same levels of natural gas when it comes to the pricing of the RNG?
So in terms of pricing, natural gas is significantly less expensive on a per MMBtu basis. I think the current Henry Hub pricing is probably somewhere between $2.50 and $3, and it costs significantly more to invest, develop renewable natural gas facilities. And so the only way to sort of make up that price disparity is by monetizing the environmental credits that are made available through many of the public policies that we've helped to implement and to expand. And when monetizing, the developer is able to then share some of that value across the supply chain, effectively making the final purchase price of RNG for the end user comparable to, and in some cases even less than what they currently pay for natural gas. And that's been largely responsible for the proliferation of our product across the transportation sector over the last 9 years specifically.
And that would be the only way. Do you believe that it's even possible to get kind of same level of pricing for the RNG?
Well, that's effectively made the price the same for the end use consumer. In terms of the cost of production, I don't know that we ever get quite that low, just because the cost of developing and financing an RNG facility are tens of millions of dollars, on average $17 million. But we have projects that larger landfills and wastewater treatment plants that are north of $100 million to construct and bring online. And so there's a huge CapEx differential there too. So I don't know that we get there. We have to make up ground in other ways, get creative, and again, share the value from the monetization of the environmental credits that are available to our industry.
Right. As the energy sector shifts towards more sustainable practices, where do you see RNG fitting in energy mix in the next decade?
The beautiful thing about renewable natural gas, one, is its interchangeability with conventional natural gas in our existing pipeline infrastructure. So we're able to take, again, methane captured from society's inevitable waste streams, and we're able to interconnect it and transport it via our existing pipeline infrastructure in state and across the country and ultimately around the world. And so our position from day one has always been we support renewable natural gas production regardless of the feedstock. We support, and as you saw exhibiting throughout this expo this week, technologies, sustainable technologies, and we support every sustainable end-use application. When we first started 12 years ago, almost 100% of the RNG produced was being combusted to generate renewable electricity. With the efficacy of our policy advocacy and public education efforts in the years since, we've seen market demand open up supporting RNG to transport. So we're replacing conventional natural gas that was previously compressed or liquefied, and we're replacing that fossil fuel with renewable natural gas. And increasingly, we're using RNG for thermal heat. So we're providing heat for the Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, for example. We're providing heat to hospitals, to businesses across the country. We're really proud of that.
That is something you have to be proud of.
And I think RNG epitomizes sustainability, because we're literally taking an environmental liability in the form of inevitable societal waste, and we're converting that into a renewable energy asset to fuel, heat, power our vehicles, homes, and businesses. You know, people, when they think of renewable energy, they might think of wind or solar first. So we're working to change that. And part of the challenge in front of us is to add curb appeal to the sustainable solution that our industry represents, right? My 12-year-old every Thursday night wheels out a black trash can, a blue recycling bin, and a green organic waste bin to the curb. And for most people, when we put our waste out, it's out of sight, out of mind. And we don't realize a life cycle is just beginning. And for decades, our country would export our growing waste problem to other countries like China and India, who are no longer accepting our refuse. They're refusing our refuse, forcing us to reconcile what are we doing as a society with the waste we produce. And our industry stands ready as a no-regret solution to help mitigate the environmental impacts and convert that into a renewable energy asset that we can all be proud of and benefit from for generations.
Incredible. How do current regulatory frameworks support or hinder the growth of the RNG industry?
So our philosophy is that at the end of the day, for better or worse, policy advocacy and education inform public policies, and those public policies impact market demand. It drives it up or drives the demand, and demand correlates with value, and value is inextricably linked with the ability of industry stakeholders, in our case the RNG space, to thrive. And so when we look back at our founding position, and we look back at our industry's growth over the last 12 years now, most of that was catalyzed by public policy, legislation in one form or another, regulation that was amended in one venue or another. And again, those policies have promulgated programs like the Renewable Fuel Standard at the federal level, the Low Carbon Fuel Standard in California that we've effectively replicated in Oregon and Washington, and a half dozen other states that are on the brink of passing similar programs and bringing those markets to bear. And so public policy plays a key role in public education, in creating markets and securing market demand for commodities like renewable natural gas. But ultimately, to your earlier question, I think it's the voluntary market. Once the general public is aware of the value proposition and the energy and the difference we can make in terms of achieving our renewable energy and climate objectives from the waste stream we're already responsible as individual households for creating, I think they're going to start to demand it of their CEOs and of the companies that they hold shares in. And so we're going to see the voluntary markets increasingly reach out to our producers and say, how do we get more of the gas you're producing to replace fossil fuels in the fueling, powering, and heating of our homes, our businesses, and our economy?
One question out of context, or not out of the context, maybe it's still kind of connected to the industry, I think, quite powerfully. What do you think where the industry is going to be, or how big changes could be in the industry after United States new president comes in, or the actual president stays in the chair? Do you see any changes in our industry?
You know, that's always a wild card.
Political level.
Yeah, there's always a political component, and so there's a wild card. Every 2 to 4 years, we have a change in the congressional makeup in our bicameral system and our House of Representatives and in the United States Senate. A new president comes in and has new political appointees. The political priorities and preferences might change from time to time. We're very fortunate as an industry that our narrative really resonates with both sides of the aisle. Whether you're preoccupied with job creation, we check that box. If you're focused on environmental benefits and emissions reductions, again, RNG checks those boxes. So we have a really fantastic industry narrative that's compelling. And we've been fortunate over the last 3 or 4 presidents that they've all stood behind the Renewable Fuel Standard at the federal level, which has been the principal policy driver behind our industry's growth, delivering RNG at least to the transportation sector to date.
Brilliant. I really appreciate your time with us today. As I said, last question to you is, could you tell me a little about your SMART initiative, also known as Sustainable Methane Abatements and Recycling Timeline?
I love telling our story from our founding history over the last 12 years, the mission that drives and gets our staff of 18 up every morning and compels us to do our work on a daily basis. Let me give you a little context. I think maybe your audience will better appreciate our SMART knowing that. So in 2011, we coalesced the industry. We didn't start the industry. The industry began, as best we can tell in North America at least, in 1982. The Fresh Kills landfill, RNG facility on Staten Island, New York, that's still operating today, delivering RNG to thousands of satisfied customers in the Northeast. But between that first project's coming online in 1982 and our founding in 2011, only 30 additional RNG facilities were developed over a 3-decade timeline. And so that partially is to blame, or explains why the general public was not aware of what RNG was. We coined the term, everything was sort of referred to as biogas in North America in 2011 and much around the world. And so when you look at that's partially to blame, right? There wasn't a lot of RNG to speak of. Again, implementing our mission and deploying our fueled by our advocacy philosophy, been able to pass legislation, regulation from California to Connecticut and from British Columbia to Quebec. That's really made a difference in the marketplace, such that industry was able to leverage investment capital to build new facilities. And by 2015, just 4 years in the business, we were able to quadruple that 30-year annual production average from 1 to 4. And we were proud of that. But in 2015, we doubled down and we challenged our industry at our RNG conference. So we said, look, by 2025, in 10 years, we want to double the number of facilities from 47 to 100. And that was met with some skepticism, and a lot of folks probably thought that was overly aggressive at the time. But to our industry's credit, they followed our lead. They took advantage of the market realities that were created by the policies we were promoting, And we actually achieved our 2025 objective and brought our 100th RNG facility on in July of 2019, 5.5 years early, 5.5 years ahead of schedule. So we went back to the drawing board with our team and with our lab leadership. And at our December conference in 2019, right before COVID shut most of the world down, we announced sustainable methane abatement recycling timeline. And as part of that initiative, we identified and cataloged 43,000 sites across North America where organic waste is aggregated. And we made it our mission. We're going to capture and control that methane by the mid-century point. So we've identified benchmarks to sort of measure how much progress we're making or how much work is still to be done for 2025, for 2030 and 2040 to keep us on track. So we hit our numbers by 2050. And from where we stand today, we should clear 500 facilities by 2025 and hit that first important benchmark. So we're really excited about that. But there's a lot of work to be done. We can't do it alone. Our team of staff, look, we have political access and policy backgrounds and communication and marketing and event planning and leadership. But when you take our expertise and you marry that to the irreplaceable industry expertise that only our members can provide in terms of real boots on the ground experience, building these facilities, operating, maintaining them, it's a compelling story. We've got a lot of work ahead of us, but we're committed to it, and we look forward to bringing that preferred future into the reality.
Thank you very much for your time. Seriously, we really enjoyed RNG Works this year, and we will be really happy to share all of this information and all what we're seeing in here to our public. We are originally from UK. We serve UK with our services. We're planning to come to USA, and we're learning from RNG. We're really proud that we have that opportunity to come and see this. So yeah, it's really incredible, and I see a big leadership of RNG in the States biogas industry.
Well, we appreciate you and your team flying all the way across the pond to join us here in Nashville. We'll look forward to continuing our collaboration, working together.
Yeah, that would be great.
So, cheers, Jan. Thank you so much.